Good afternoon. This is Joelle Magyar, Superintendent of Avon Lake City Schools, with Autumn Reed, our treasurer. We'd like to take this opportunity to apologize for the technical difficulty we had at our community forum. Mrs. Reed and I will be re-recording the first 19 slides of this presentation so you can hear it in totality. Topics that we will be discussing are costs and financials, security, property development, and community engagement. The Auditor of State has issued some new guidance as to who is permitted to support the bond issue. And some of that guidance deems the Board of Education, our district administration when not on the clock, and our bond committee to talk about supporting the bond issue. The information that we are providing is going to be factual, as district personnel are not allowed to advocate for or against the passage of the levy or bond issue during times that they are being compensated by the district. Since Mrs. Reed and I are audio recording this during the course of our workday, we will simply provide factual information of the bond issue. So Autumn, can you please share with us how much this bond issue is going to cost our taxpayers?
The cost of the project is $170 million, which is equivalent to 7.6 mils or $266 per year per $100,000 market value. The district has a unique opportunity as it has debt from previous bond issues expiring in 2026. If the collection of this millage continues, it would help offset the cost of the project, reducing the millage to 5.6 mils or $196 per $100,000 of market value.
So how can one of our taxpayers find out how much this will impact them personally?
That's a great question. There is a calculator on the district's website that can calculate the impact the bond issue would have on an individual basis should the bond issue pass. The calculator provides step-by-step instructions to obtain the market value of your home from the county auditor's website. Please do not use Zillow, Trulia, or other realtor websites to determine your market value, as it is not the same value the county auditor uses to calculate your taxes.
Thank you. How can the tax amount in the bond issue calculator be accurate without knowing what my home value is for the tax year 2023?
The bond issue calculator generates an estimated cost based on your current taxable or assessed value for tax year 22. Tax year 22 values are the current values certified by the state of Ohio and are the only values that are permitted to be used for the bond issue.
And can you tell us what is a mill?
Yes, a mill is not an abbreviation for $1 million, though that is often the misconception. It is 1/10 of a cent and is used in expressing tax rates on a per dollar basis. This translates to $1 for each $1,000 of assessed property value. The property tax rate is measured in mils, which is why you will see mills referenced in the ballot language.
Thank you. And why do I see both 7.6 mils and 170 million listed for the cost of the bond issue?
Ohio Revised Code requires both the millage and dollar amount of the bond issue to be stated in the ballot language.
On the next slide, we show our community how they can manually calculate to determine the impact of the bond issue. Can you explain this in more detail?
Yes, as discussed earlier, the bond issue is a user-friendly resource that is available to determine how much the bond issue, if passed, would impact an individual taxpayer. However, the calculation can also be done manually. To calculate the impact the bond issue would have on an individual basis, replace the $100,000 market total value with your home's market total value stated on the Lorain County Auditor's website. And as a reminder, the market total value listed on the County Auditor's website is the only value used to calculate property taxes. Do not use realtor sites like Zillow or Trulia to determine your home's value for tax purposes.
Thank you. The value of my home increased. Should I expect my property taxes to increase at the same percent?
No, the annual debt service, which is comprised of principal and interest, will be a fixed number. Therefore, as property values increase, less millage would be required to meet the annual debt service requirement.
So if property values increase, will the district collect more than the stated ballot amount?
That's a great question. No, taxes do not increase in direct proportion with an increase in property value. Ohio Revised Code prevents an increase in revenue from voted levies due to inflation.
How is a bond issue similar to a home purchase?
Well, this slide will show the similarities between a home purchase and a bond issue. In each case, money is borrowed to repay debt, which consists of both principal and interest. The interest component is unavoidable, which means the overall cost of the home or bond issue will be greater than the purchase price. Just like a home mortgage, a bond issue can be refinanced if interest rates bear enough cost savings to refinance.
Will the district still need to pass an operating levy in the future?
Okay. Yes, the district will need to pass an operating levy in the future. The last operating levy was passed in 2013 for a 10-year period of time. Due to the financial stewardess of the district, we are still operating off of this levy. But based on the current 5-year forecast, a new operating levy would be needed sometime in calendar 2025.
Is financing a bond for 37 years unusual?
That's a great question, and we have received that question several times. Most Ohio school districts extend the final maturity of a bond issue to minimize the ballot millage as well as the actual annual debt service payments on its taxpayers. By extending the maturity, the tax burden is spread among benefiting taxpayers as much as possible.
Thank you. Will a taxpayer see savings if the bonds are refinanced?
Yes, bond issues can be refinanced, or what is also referred to as refunded. As debt service decreases after a refunding, the district will be able to collect less in taxes, reducing the millage needed to make debt service payments. Like homeowners locking in lower interest rates, state and local governments like the district have the ability to refinance outstanding debt. The district has refinanced the 1999 bond issue in 2005, 2014, and 2021, yielding over $4.5 million in savings for our taxpayers.
The current project obviously will yield some cost savings to the district. Can you talk through those cost savings and explain how they were calculated?
Yes, if the bond issue passes, we have projected to see $1.5 million to $1.9 million in operational savings. The savings were calculated based on taking the average actual costs for 2018-19, 19-20, and the 21-22 fiscal years. We excluded the 2019-20 fiscal year due to the COVID school closure.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll keep it short and sweet. I think the video speaks for itself, but one of the most frequently asked questions that we've had is, there's a permanent improvement levy. Why can't permanent improvement dollars be used to renovate and update buildings? And another question that comes comes up is, why not simply renovate the buildings to begin with? And the math is not favorable to that. And this is the second video in the series that we have put out that sort of walks through that in light of some big projects that we either have completed in the district or that we would need to complete in the next few years, and why the permanent improvement levy is not sufficient to handle those expenses.
The Avon Lake City School District is committed to personalized educational excellence and steeped in more than a century of history and tradition. My name is Ned Lawver. I'm the Director of Operations for the school district. Our department works very closely with the Treasurer's Office, especially when it comes to the district's permanent improvement budget. Permanent improvements are capital improvement projects and long-term maintenance, repair, and equipment items designed to last more than 5 years. Permanent improvement dollars, also referred to as PI money, may not be spent on the district's daily operations, such as employee salaries. Avon Lake receives approximately $700,000 annually in permanent improvement funds from the PI levy that was originally passed in 1991, 32 years ago, which is renewed every 5 years. The district uses this permanent improvement money on everything from school buses to roof replacement. In December 2020, the district received the results of a study from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission that indicated that repairs and renovations in the district would total approximately $93 million. Adjusted for inflation, that number would equal approximately $109 million as of July 2023, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI inflation calculator, and money generated by the PI levy does not get adjusted for inflation. At 6 of the district's 7 buildings, the renovation figure from the OFCC was at or near the so-called 2/3 threshold to consider new construction instead of renovation. In other words, if it would cost 2/3 the overall cost of new construction to renovate an existing building, it is generally recommended that a district consider building new instead of renovating. One frequently asked question has been, why not simply renovate the buildings? And folks also ask why the district's permanent improvement dollars couldn't be used for that purpose. As we said before, the PI levy generates about $700,000 annually. The cost of a school bus is now about $124,000, and we usually need to purchase 2 buses a year over a 15 to 20 year time frame to keep our fleet running. That's $250,000 each year spent on buses alone, which leaves $450,000 to complete permanent improvements to all 7 school buildings in the district, including Memorial Stadium and other such facilities and fields, plus the transportation center itself. Here's how that stacks up to the projects we have completed or know we would need to complete at our schools. In the summer of 2021, we had to replace failing roof sections at Eastview and Troy, totaling approximately $388,000, or almost a full year of non-school bus PI money. Last summer, we made necessary repairs to the parking lots and drives at the high school, which were 20 years old and crumbling. That project, while successful, cost more than a year's worth of non-school bus PI to complete. The repair and replacement items itemized in the OFCC report are even more daunting. Adjusted for inflation, the cost to replace the entire roof at Learwood Middle School is estimated at more than $2 million, or about 5 years' worth of non-school bus PI. To renovate just the windows and skylights at Redwood Elementary School is estimated to cost about a year's worth of non-school bus PI. The HVAC system at Troy is sometimes perceived as one of the better systems in the district, but the OFCC recommended replacement of the system to comply with Ohio Building Code and Ohio School Design Manual standards over 2 years ago at a cost of more than $2.5 million, or more than 5 years' worth of non-school bus permanent improvement money. Overall, it would take more than 20 years of non-school bus PI funds to complete the repair and replacement items recommended in the OFCC report, not accounting for inflation. More items would certainly come up over that time frame, and the physical structure of the buildings themselves would still be largely the same and incompatible with students' educational needs. The bottom line, the math doesn't work, and we believe that continuing to spend permanent improvement money to renovate the elementary schools, Troy, and Learwood is not fiscally responsible. With new construction and facilities consolidation, we believe that our permanent improvement dollars will go further, maintaining 3 pre-K through 8 spaces instead of 6, and operating the buildings will cost less, making new construction our recommended choice for the Avon Lake community.
So Ned had done one of those previous. That was the second one. The third one that will come out soon is focusing on education. And as it fits with what we're talking about, we're going to bring up our superintendent of schools, Ms. Joelle Magyard, now to present to you as well. So, Joelle.
Good evening, everyone. One of the other questions we've received over and over about building new construction is what security enhancements would be included in those buildings. And I want you to know that these are some examples that are on this slide of things that we have currently in our buildings, and other things that we would probably most likely put in the new builds. We have to stay very general about this topic, and I know it's on everybody's mind, and trust me, it is our first priority to keep all of your children as safe as we can possibly keep them. However, security details, floor plans, those are not public records, and that's for obvious reasons. We don't want to put out floor plans and every security feature that we put into buildings for the public to know, because then people are savvy and they figure out ways around those security features. But some of those are going to include cameras, which we have in all of our buildings now, access controls. There is a lot of new technology out there, especially with visitor management systems, where if you are going to visit a building, you have to submit your driver's license. The machine will actually do a quick background check on you. And if there's something that is tagged in a background check, they will not let you in the building. And so it goes through a process. So these are all wonderful high-tech security features that we would look forward to putting in some of our new builds. But definitely looking at some of the other security features that you see on there, looking at ballistic film. People have put those on doorways going into buildings. Ballistic film, it will not necessarily stop somebody, but it would take longer for that glass to break if somebody were to try to penetrate some of the glass openings in the school buildings. So we look forward to the design to address security, because a lot of the security features that are put in the buildings are due to how we design and how you get access to children once they are in the buildings. And it's really controlling the flow of people that go in and out of your buildings. And so all of these on this slide would be included in our new designs. In addition, we want to talk a little bit about property development, because we've had a lot of questions on what's going to happen with the properties once the schools close. So first and foremost, I'd like to talk about Redwood Elementary. We are very fortunate and honored that the city of Avon Lake has partnered with us, the city council, and we thank you, and thank you, Mayor Zelka, for that. Passed a resolution that the school district, once the property at Redwood is vacated, will sell that property to the city of Avon Lake for their future plans of creating a senior center and moving some recreational offices over there. And one of the questions that we received most recently about the Redwood property is, why was this a good deal for the city? Well, the property itself right now is currently valued at $1.5 million. And so we came to an agreement with the City Council of Avon Lake and the mayor to sell it to them for $500,000. And we did that for a couple reasons. One, we really appreciate the partnership that we have with the City of Avon Lake and look forward to other opportunities to collaborate together. This is a cost savings not only to the city that we're happy to be part of, but it's also a benefit to our seniors in our community and to the rec department. We do a lot of sharing right now with fields and facilities, and we want to continue that partnership. So this allows then the city to have some additional dollars to do the renovations that they feel necessary to that Redwood facility. So again, we thank you and look forward to future partnerships with the city of Avon Lake. We have our Erie View and our Westview locations that currently have our buildings on them. Once vacated, the plan would be to, we would take down those buildings and create some extra green space and fields for all of the community of Avon Lake to take advantage of and be able to use. We are talking and throwing around the idea of possibly being able to turf another area if we can do that. So that definitely is something that we're considering for one of those areas. And it is my pleasure to turn it over to Kendra to talk about community engagement.
Said, but I do want to thank you all for coming tonight. And for those of you online that can't hear me, which are probably all my friends that I sent the link right before I arrived, thank you to them. I'll thank them later. I'm going to go a little wave because I know it's being at least recorded here. I know you're not live streaming. But the point of tonight is to engage with you. And so my job tonight is to make sure that we're doing a good job of letting you not only, thanking you for being here, for being present, to engage with us. And as Ron said, we'll be doing a lot more questions. But we also have the mailbox. And if you don't know how to use a QR code, which I do appreciate, there may be some out there that haven't done that yet, I'm happy to show you how to do that. But there's another email address where you can also, I think it's called feedback at avonlakecityschools.org, where you can actually submit questions, and those are typically answered same day. So we try to turn those around, and it does help us continue to update that FAQ document that Jack kind of showed at the beginning and is at all of your tables. You saw one of the videos in the series. I believe if we have time, there's another one that we will show you as well, right after I get done talking. And then we do have a third video in development. My ask of you is if you want access to those videos, please let us know if you can't find them or you haven't found them or they haven't been sent to you. I do think they're a helpful tool to share out with friends and family that maybe don't have access to the facts. I know that some folks that I've shared them with were like, wow, that was really informative. I had no idea. I didn't even know we had a permanent improvement fund. So we're all on different points of our learning journey is why I say that. And so I know sometimes it's hard to explain things that you may have heard in a meeting, and I think these videos, FAQs, go a long way. Tonight is, I believe, our fourth community forum, and we intend to continue having these community forum meetings, even after the November election. It is the intention of the board to create space to talk about important priorities that the board is working on and to engage with you as a community. I know I haven't gotten to know you, many of you yet. I hope to get to know more of you through table conversations or coffee talks over time. But as you get to know me and you get to know other members on the board, we all believe that it does take a village to raise children, to be part of a community. And so we hope that through community forums that we can continue to create space to share information and to have dialogue around questions. And then lastly, you can always email or call a board member. Our emails are all listed on the district website, and we do try to get back to folks as timely as possible, and as we are able. And then I know that many of us will also share our phone number if you just want to have a phone call or text or whatever works the best for you. So with that, I'll stop talking for a moment so that we can all listen to this next video.
The Avon Lake City School District is committed to personalized educational excellence and steeped in more than a century of history and tradition. My name is Ned Lawver. I'm the Director of Operations for the school district, and I'm so proud to work on the support staff side of the organization because of the pride they take in driving kids to school, serving healthy meals, cleaning and maintaining our buildings, and so much more. Our school buildings are warm, welcoming, wonderful places to learn, and we work very hard to keep them that way. In December 2020, the district received the results of a study from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission that indicated that 6 of the district's 7 buildings had reached the point where new construction should be considered instead of renovation. Here are some of the key areas identified in the report for the community to consider. Here at Learwood, most of our roof sections are from the mid-1980s and early 1990s. This section is from 1993, and as you can see, we have made several repair efforts. but water is still getting through, causing damage to the classrooms below. At Learwood alone, the cost of replacing the roof is estimated at more than $2 million, and all buildings in the district face similar challenges. Redwood is our newest elementary school, constructed in the early 1960s. Its stacked boilers are in poor condition and require frequent repairs. Speaking of repairs, despite routine maintenance and care of our high school chillers, one chiller experienced a catastrophic failure over the winter, which will require replacing the entire plant at an estimated cost of $1.3 million. None of our elementary, intermediate, or middle school systems comply with current Ohio school design standards, and none of them can easily be renovated to accommodate modern air filtration systems or air conditioning. And the high school system? Total repair and replacement of the system was recommended by the OFCC over 2 years ago. In addition to needing more toilets, sinks, and drinking fountains to meet modern-day standards, Eastview Elementary School also has the original cast iron waste piping in the crawl spaces underneath the building, as do our other schools. Last year, a section of this waste piping disintegrated, resulting in waste being flushed directly into the crawl space. To replace just the sanitary waste piping under Eastview is estimated to cost over $100,000, with similar work recommended in the other buildings. In late 2020, the OFCC estimated the cost of all plumbing repairs in the district at approximately $3.28 million. It's not just plumbing. The electrical systems in the buildings are a mix of the original systems and upgrades that are now over 20 years old. While the district has invested in energy-efficient lighting in the largest spaces in several of our facilities, there is still a long way to go. The OFCC report labeled several of our building electrical systems inadequate now and/or for future use. Troy Intermediate is our newest school building, but still over 50 years old. The OFCC cited masonry, windows and window lintels, exterior doors, and insufficient expansion joints as areas that require attention. These challenges are not unique to Troy. All buildings in the district face similar challenges as they continue to age. The OFCC estimated that to correct just the issues with exterior walls and chimneys in the district would cost more than $1.5 million, a number that doesn't include windows or exterior doors. Pre-K through 8, we operate 6 of everything: cafeterias, gymnasiums, offices, clinics, and more. Not only are they not of adequate size, but they cost more to operate each year. This is Erie View's kitchen and serving line, sized for the 1950s when many students likely walked home for lunch. Storage capacity is limited, and the elementary schools do not have modern dishwashing facilities. The district estimates that operating 3 schools instead of 6 would save up to $800,000 annually due to operational reconfiguration alone, with the added benefit of having adequately sized spaces for current and future needs. Here at Westview is a perfect example of how the needs of today's students are no longer met by our 70-year-old elementary schools. In this classroom for students with special needs, we need a restroom with a changing table next year. Our students come first, so we removed a toilet, took down a partition, and ordered a changing table to fit the space. We are doing whatever we can to help make our facilities match our programming needs, but right now that means retrofitting existing spaces that are smaller than current Ohio School Design Manual standards. These are just some of the challenges we face, and I'm so proud of our staff for facing these challenges head-on every day. But based on the OFCC report and the work of the District Facilities Committee, we believe that constructing new facilities is the best recommendation we can make to the community moving forward.
So, here we are tonight, at yet another community forum, hopefully delivering to you information in real time about things that you can take home and consider relative to the bond issue this coming November, as well as what you can do to do your part to educate others, hopefully having more of the facts than before you arrive. But coming soon is video number 3. And so we will do our best to also make sure that that also gets out to you, because we do feel that having this information about our district and these facts is very important. And then, of course, Election Day is coming sooner than all of us might expect on November 7th. So hopefully we'll see you all at the ballot on that day.
So now it's time to engage you guys in the room. We do have some questions that have come through online. So I'd like you to raise your hand. I will walk to your area. I've got one mic. I'll hold it with you, and we'll move through the questions. I'll balance, as we've done in the 3 previous, between folks here in the room and people who are online who send me questions in. Would anybody like to lead it off? If they want to come up to the back there, anyone.
Well, I'm not sure who this question was before, but if I'm remembering correctly, you said the repairs would be about $103 million and the whole plan is $170. So does that not mean that the taxes would go up anyway to make the repairs? Where does that come from? If we would make the repairs?
So if I understand the question, so what we're proposing is a bond issue for $170 million, which would build 3 new schools and would be closing the 6 existing schools. The current permanent improvement levy that raises $700,000 a year would remain out there until the next time was up for election, which I'm not exactly sure, but it is, I think it's every 5 years. So that money would be used for school buses or other things that are not included. But obviously, we would have newer facilities that would require less maintenance. I'm not sure if I answered the question right.
So I think I got your question. You're asking the choice of $103 million to repair. Where would we get that money if we chose to go that route? Well, again, we would have to put a similar bond issue on the ballot to raise $103 million for that. However, just renovating these existing buildings would only get us another 10 years or so, and that bond issue would be another 20 or 30 years. So we'd be paying for repairs that outlive the life of those repairs. So as a board and as a facilities committee, we decided, based on the OFCC guidelines, to put a bond issue on to replace instead of repair.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm in favor of it, but I'm just saying, I think some of the main resistance I hear from people is they don't want taxes to go up. That's not like growing up. I mean, we can't have growth schools today, so they have to be fixed.
We'll go to the front of the room here. Second.
I would just add the educational impact. Let's not forget why we're asking for new buildings. It's really looking at the educational impact. And while that 103 may repair the building, it doesn't provide what I feel would be the appropriate space, technology needs, and the way to engage kids for their future. There's a lot of things going on in education right now that are not going away, whether we like it or not. Our kids are not being educated in the same way that all of us were being educated, and we can't be okay with saying, well, it was okay for me, it's got to be okay for our kids. Our kids' brains are wired differently, our kids are learning in different ways, and I know you don't want to hear this, but artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, they're not going away. And so unless we embrace what their world is going to be like, and both of those things are included in your children's lives, whether we agree or not, we have to embrace them and teach them in a different way so that they are prepared for their future. Their future doesn't look like our future. It looks a lot different, and we have to stay ahead to provide the best education we can for our kids. And just fixing our current spaces does not allow us to move forward with the type of engagement we need to engage our kids in.
I have kind of a multi-question here. One being, what is the current enrollment of the district? What is the projected enrollment? And I don't know whether you did it on 5 years or 10 years or whatever you have. Based on that, we have numerous elementary schools going to. How big are these schools in comparison to what we have? Because now the elementaries are going to carry 6 grades in them. How big is that school going to be, and how's it going to be? Will it be too many, let's say, small kids? You can do that in high school, but I'm not so sure that I'm comfortable with doing that in an elementary setting. I got a little bit of history with, education in the past before I retired and stuff, so I'm kind of looking at how that's going to work. And then, we're going to kind of double up with the middle school. How are we building towards a projected enrollment for the future? And a guess, and a lot of that's a guess too, because you don't know the true enrollment. You've got to kind of throw what do you think it's going to be. Thanks.
So before you answer that, Jack, could you guys hear in the back of the room? Not at all. Okay, so and correct me if I'm wrong. The question was, have we projected enrollment? Second part of that question, taking 4 elementary schools and making them into 2 with large numbers. We know what those numbers will be. We have an idea of what those numbers would be. And then having a wide range of ages in those 2 elementary schools, how will we make sure that we're properly educating the children and keeping them in a space that's comfortable and nurturing to them?
That's pretty much covered.
Okay.
Okay. So to your first question, our current enrollment is about 3,700 students. Based on the enrollment projections from Future Think Incorporated that were done 2 years ago, we anticipate maxing out around 4,000 students. There have been 3 enrollment projection studies done in the Avon Lake City schools in the last 10 years by Future Think, and we have been ahead of the curve slightly on each of the 2 prior enrollment projections. The current enrollment projections do take into account all of the information on all of the housing that, as of last year, the 750 homes that are being planned for Avon Lake, that does take that into account. It does not take anything into account with what may or may not happen with the power plant land. By going from buildings that are K-4 to K-5 and having 2 of them, we would not open at capacity because the 4,000 number is projected closer to 10 years out. But we would be opening somewhere in the neighborhood between 800 and 850, but we would certainly build larger for that to have the capacity. In the design phase of the project, that is how we go about making the smaller feel by using what's called a studio concept, having different areas for different grades. And the way that the design phase is done, it handles the school within a school concept and feel so that we can not only provide a smaller environment within a larger environment, but also do a lot of the things that Mrs. Magyar was saying in terms of educationally providing spaces and activities and centers that best meet our students' needs. In every part?
I believe so.
All right, thank you.
So we want a balance between here in the room and then online, so I'll ask an online question. And the question is this, the first one that we got. If Redwood is sold to the city, will the Avon Lake City Schools be responsible for repairs, updates to the building before the city takes possession? If not, do we know how the city will cover those expenses?
While the building is still owned by the Avon Lake City Schools, we will do all the repairs necessary to keep the kids safe as possible. Once that building is turned over, that is property of the city and they will handle as they feel they need to.
So we're going to go back to the room and we're over here now, so if folks want to maybe cast your eyes this way.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question sort of tangent to that one. As new homeowners and residents to Avon Lake buying our first home on the border of Parkview and Redwood and Redwood Boulevard, while disappointed that we won't be able to walk any future children to their first day of class, we understand both the pros and cons of the buildings, potential buildings of these new institutions. Our question would be, if sold to the city, what power would be given to the community community in terms of deciding what that Redwood Elementary site would become and the impact it would have on potentially being a senior center in such a residential area.
That's a great question, and I'm going to direct you to ask that question to the city. We will not speak on behalf of the city and what their plans are for doing it. Once that property becomes the city's property, it's their decisions, how they're going to engage the community and what you might expect and see at that facility.
Very good, thank you. Back to the online questions. And I'm reading this verbatim. Obviously, the questionnaire says we want the bond issue to pass. However, what happens if it doesn't pass? I envision it goes back on the ballot in the future, but in the meantime, our PI fund, $700,000, which has been detailed graded tonight, which may or may not work, it needs to be done on buildings to keep them running and safe. Where does the extra money come from? Does it come from the general fund? Does that mean programs or other things will get cut? So to cut to the chase on that, if the bond issue doesn't pass, where will money specifically to maintain the buildings come from if we don't have enough in our PI fund? You want to answer that, Ed, or Jim?
That lies our conundrum here. As we look at our operating budget challenges, we are facing these issues with our building. And the short answer is, as we described, with the permanent improvement funds can only be used for buildings. And when that money is expended and we have expenses that run over that, the only place to take that money is then from the general fund. And that causes the challenges that we face in our operating forecast to have to make decisions on how to balance our budget from there. So that's one of the reasons why we put the slide up about the operational savings, because having newer buildings could potentially lower the cost for our operations, but if it doesn't, we'll be faced with having to make more difficult budget decisions on our operating budget.
So we've got a question in the room again, and I'll say this once to everybody. If you're the person in the room, put that uncomfortably close to your mouth. You guys can probably hear me in the back, right? Yeah. Okay, but if you're someone else, just put it real close, please.
The question that I've got is with respect to the existing facilities and refurbishment, the area per student, if we look at area per student as it sits, even if we renovate, how will that deal with the issue of the growth? Will we have enough area per student, or we truly need the new facilities to be able to compete with other school districts with area per student?
Okay, they handed me the mic. So, in terms of square footage, the state has a formula that they use when you build new buildings that talks about how many square feet you need per student. They take that into how many classrooms go in each grade level, how big your gymnasium should be, how big your cafeteria should be, actually how many parking spaces. So there's a magic formula that they use that are what are called minimum standards. Whether or not our facilities would be able to have, at 4,000 students, meet the minimum standards is kind of almost not as important to the district, because the district has never been looking at what's the minimum we can do for our students. We're looking at what we can do to provide the best educational opportunity we can for our students. And so taking that information and saying, okay, could we cram 26 kids into a classroom instead of 22 like we do at the elementary level? We probably could, but would the community be satisfied with us changing the delivery of education that our students have become accustomed to? And I might comment, this is factual, we are a 5-star district. You probably saw that in the newspaper. We have one of the highest ratings on the Ohio State Report Card, and because we have a proactive board and district staff that is always looking out best educationally, these are why we try and avoid the things when we're doing the minimum for our students.
The second part of your question, though, was about our current buildings and whether or not they can handle our current capacity as well as the growth. You answered the first part.
Okay.
You didn't.
Obviously, we are using our current buildings to handle our current enrollment, but you could go to some of our elementary schools and you would be surprised at places where students are having to make do for things such as small group reading, for intervention, even for various programs that we have. I go over to Learwood and I see the band all crammed into this one small room. Over at East UNC, a reading tutor was working with kids that double up as a PE closet a couple years ago. So yes, do we have the space right now for our existing enrollment? We do. Is it ideal? You know, that's up to the individual person to decide.
So I'm going to go back to the online and then over here for an in-person. Question online, and I'm reading these verbatim because I don't want to take away from what your question is. What is the campaign communications plan in these final weeks? Will there be more mailers? Will there be tables at sporting events or giant eagle door to door? Worried about reaching those not on social media. Would love to have a more pointed document addressing common objections and the consequences of what would happen if the bond issue should fail.
As we stated at the beginning, this is a factual presentation, so in terms of the campaign, that is a conversation with the bond committee, but I can tell you what some of us are doing over the next couple of weeks. We have appointments identified at some of the assisted living facilities around Avon Lake where school personnel, including myself, Autumn, Dr. Deeby, Dr. Alvern, we're all going to speak on the facts about our building. So very similar to the presentation that you're hearing this evening will be delivered throughout the city over the next couple of weeks, providing facts for people to understand the need in our district.
Even though I'm on the bond committee, I'm currently here in my capacity as a board member. But would it be appropriate to ask someone from the bond committee to answer that question?
No.
Okay, I'm just asking out loud. So we have a lot of legal guidance about what we can do tonight, but we do have members of the bond committee sitting right here. Mike Lisi,
Raise your hand if you're on.
others, that if you would like to talk with them after the meeting, they would be happy to have you speak with them or volunteer your time and treasure.
Oh, we're over here now?
That was actually my question that I submitted through the QR code, but that was my concern is just, so I will stop over after the meeting, but just concerned about reaching people that aren't on social media, and so it sounds like there's a different forum for that, but we'll connect afterwards.
Yes.
But that was my question. Okay.
Back real quick, the page, this is an online question, the page says click the link bond issue calculator, but you can't click paper. What is the link? So it's the QR code that you're looking for, right?
If you go to the Building a Legacy website, Jack, do you want to share that? Web URL?
Actually, it's on the front page of the Avon Lake City Schools website. You scroll down, the bond calculator is the first item under news.
So Jack, want to repeat that again, please?
Main page of the Avon Lake City Schools website. And it's right there on the page.
Right, first item under news.
First item under news.
Okay, we're back in the room over here.
Autumn, this is the question I told you I was going to ask. At the last meeting, you said the total interest cost would be around $204 million. Has that figure changed any since the last time we were in this room?
So I did speak with Mike earlier today, who was kind enough to reach out and tell me he would be asking this question. So right now, all of our numbers are estimates. Until a bond issue first passes, then bonds have to be sold. We have to know what the interest rate is. Then we would actually know actual costs. But to Mike's point, we do have a preliminary calculation that is available, and the interest is definitely compounded over time, and that's due to what I explained earlier. If we're going to borrow money, we have to pay an interest rate, a finance charge to borrow that money. So I have reached out to Steeple Nicholas, who is our underwriter, and I've asked them to look at that calculation again. And we will revisit that if it is different. And Mike, you know you're always welcome to give a call back. And if it does changes, I will reach out to you.
Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
Mike has a follow-up.
The follow-up is, again, from the last meeting, I asked a question about the retiring bond levy. Now, Autumn, I believe you said that the plan is to not retire it, but extend it for the 30-some years of this November project. Is that correct?
So, no, it is not. Not in the way you phrased it. But we are not able to renew anything related to those expiring levies unless they would be placed back on the ballot. What my slide earlier showed was that because we have expiring debt in 2026, as that debt expires, that cost would then be able to be applied to offset what's going to be on the ballot, which is 7.6 mils. So we have approximately, and I'm being conservative with this number, we have approximately 2 mils that are being collected on current debt that expires in 26. So if the bond issue would pass for 7.6 mils, we already as taxpayers, and I'm a taxpayer here as well, so that's why I say we are already paying on those prior issues. It would be an ask to continue, in theory, to collect that millage. The continuation of that millage is rolled into the 7.6.
Thank you, Mike. Back to online. And you know, I'm just guessing, but maybe Ned, this is one of yours. Not that you asked this question, but maybe you're the guy to answer it. The question is, I'm concerned about the removal of trees at the Eastview School property and the wildlife that lives there. The removal of trees and the proximity of the school buildings and the residential homes behind that school is a concern for privacy and will it lower our property value of those homes. Are the Eastview plans taking into consideration the proximity to the residential homes behind the property?
So that's a great question. We're not at the design phase yet of the sites. And so when you get into that process, for Avon to be successful, when you get into that process, that's when you begin to work with the architect, the community, all stakeholders in the community, internal and external stakeholders of the community, to design the sites and what that looks like, to see building plans come forward before the community and to have those exact conversations. And all modern construction plans for schools take into account environmental concerns, and take into account stormwater retention ponds and retention basins. I know it's getting super exciting tonight, we're talking about stormwater retention, but here we are. But all site plans take that into account, as well as site circulation, parking, traffic, traffic coming in the neighborhood and out of the neighborhood for events, things like that, including natural barriers for light and exterior lighting on a site, as well as environmental impact on that site. There are other things that we have in place as well, such as working with the environmental club here at the high school to have discussions about trees and planting trees and where those go and what gets removed and what is placed back and what the landscaping looks like. But that's the appropriate phase for those discussions would be during the design phase, which is a community phase at that point.
I've got a couple more online ones, but anybody in here want me to come to you?
When the levy passes, when would we effectively see that on our tax?
Just repeat that for the proposal. The question was, on the passing of a levy, when would they see that on their tax bill? Rob, did you hear me back there? Okay.
So you will see in the ballot language that the first year of collection would be 2024. Is the first year of collection.
All right, I'm going to go to an online one, and then we'll go back to the room if somebody has one. It's a question, it's a statement and a question. Wouldn't Eerieview be a better option for a senior center? It has access from 2 major roads, is centrally located, and has plenty of land for adding outdoor recreation space.
There's a couple reasons why Eerieview makes actually a better spot for athletic fields and Redwood a better site for the community center. One is the Eagles that are located on Redwood restrict what we could do with the Redwood site. And Eerieview is actually, I believe, the smallest of the sites. Redwood, I think, is over 19 acres. I mean, there's a lot of land in Redwood. Personally, I didn't even know it was that big until I saw the surveys. But actually, the Redwood site is much bigger than Eerieview, and so Eerieview being the smallest and the proximity to the high school made the most sense for the additional athletic fields to allow the high school teams to practice in those fields as well.
I'll stay online unless there's somebody in the room. Next online question. What happens to the funds recollected from sales of former sites, including the $500,000 at Redwood?
So anytime we sell any type of real estate in a school district, the money has to go back into that PI fund. It cannot be deposited into our general fund. So that money, and it's a one-time cost, so please remember, it's not something that we get every single year. So you sell the property, you get that money once, it's one-time money, but it has to be used for PI uses.
Okay, we've got a question in the room right here.
From the list here, talked about operational cost savings of 1.5, 1.9 million. Is that annual basis? So I guess if that's if we are saving that much every year, does that mean future operating levies would be less?
That is a fact that I'm seeing, Ned. That was an annual number, and that is part of our rationale and kind of forward thinking for future operating levies is if we know we have new buildings coming online and being able to project out when that would happen, that certainly would be an input to the calculation of what would be the most appropriate operating levy, knowing that we would have new buildings. But it would take, I believe, 4 to 5 years to have these new buildings up and running, if I'm recalling correctly. Sorry, 3 years. 3 years.
Does that answer your question? Is the OFCC master plan, I'm looking at that, with the site studies available for review?
Yes, the OFCC report is a public record, and we would handle it as such. It's a very thorough document.
Next question to the room here, unless Jim will have more.
Just so you know, this isn't just like a 2-page executive summary they sent. It's like a 500-page document. Each building is detailed for every type of, so if you're at Troy, they go through the HVAC, the electrical, and each one of their specific findings. It took well over a year for us, from when they came out, to get us the report back. So it is a lot of data that we did reflect on before we went down this path.
Question back in the room, and I'll repeat it because we do have folks in the back that are struggling to hear.
I just wondered what's going to happen to Westview.
So the question was, what will happen to Westview, the elementary school on the western end of town?
The current plan is to take the building down and then reimagine that space as a green space. I think that also too will be part of a community engagement process that we will lead as we've discussed. So that is a future site for additional fields or however we decide to use that as most appropriate for the district's needs and the community's needs for that matter.
Since we're on Westview as a topic, another online question. Is the cost of the demo of Westview and Erie View factored into the bond levy? Is the cost of the demo of Westview and Erie View factored into the bond levy?
That is factored into the bond levy.
Any in the room? I got several.
Yes, over here.
Ron, okay, I'll go right here, and then I'll come over to you. Yep.
And you just moved back to Avon Lakes, so, I was wondering, this is kind of a long question. If we look at, let's say, 37 years as the time frame, to where we are right now. I was 14, living in Avon Lake. My husband was 13 and went to Learwood, okay? I was wondering why, and I don't think any of you were here 37 years ago, why didn't we set aside more money over the last 37 years? And I noticed, and help me understand this line item, the capital outlay line item over the last, whatever, you can pull up different budgets, was between 2 to 5%. So one, why didn't we put more money aside? And the reason why I'm saying that is, fast forward 37 years down the road, my daughter's 14. She could be sitting here in the same situation. I'm thinking that down the road there's going to be a different way that schools are funded. I don't think we're going to be sitting here doing levies because I just don't think this is going to be the way in the future. Should we not start thinking of putting more money aside for the future generations?
So I'll answer that in a couple ways. Of course. How easy is that to do though on a school budget when we're still in a state that relies on levies for our funding? So it's not like we can go to the state and say, hey, our budget's $46 million, but this year we need $50 million. It doesn't work that way. We get $46 million, we get $46 million, we get $46 million until new money levy is put on the ballot. And at that point, you may get an increase in whatever that new money is. Let's say it does go up to 50 million, then you get 50 million, you get 50 million. Well, while we're getting the same amount of money, what is happening to cost of everything? Eventually those two lines are going to cross. So while yes, and we do put capital money away for certain things like field turf. We know field turf has a lifespan of 15 years, so we're putting money away because we know we have to replace that. Unfortunately, when these buildings were built, there wasn't that forethought because buildings used to last forever until they don't, right? And so with the new build, you're using different materials. When Autumn had stated that the building has a life of 40 years, that doesn't mean the building's going to crumble in 40 years. It means that that building then would start to require us to put money back into it. So when we talk about the lifespan of the building, that's what we're talking about, is when you're going to have to put money into it. I think to answer your question, when the bond issue passes and we have to spend less of our PI money on fixing things because new buildings, the thought would be there's not going to be anything that we need to replace or that's going to break anywhere in the near future, that could be an option to start putting away some of that capital money for when we do have a big project that we would have the cash to be able to do so. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would agree with Joelle in her explanation, and I would also add that from setting aside money, we're not allowed to just have a rainy day fund. So we have the general fund that covers all of our operational expenses. Our permanent improvement fund covers capital expenses with a life of 5 years or more. So I am not permitted by law to segregate another fund to put money in for a rainy day. The law doesn't allow me to do that. So we've tried to work within the confines of the law, as Joelle explained with our turf replacement. We have replaced the turf. We replaced it actually the first year of COVID. And we had the money to do that. We set that aside. We set aside $45,000 out of our PI money every year into a PI fund. So I have very strict rules that I have to follow related to governmental accounting and how Ohio Revised Code dictates how I account for funds. It's just not an option for us to just set money aside. And I would like to add, Joelle spoke to the increases in valuation, but the amount of money we get continues to remain flat unless we gain growth on inside millage, and that's getting into the weeds, so I won't go there tonight. But we also have to remember, you've lived here a long time in our community, and now your father-in-law is coming back, which is wonderful. But we've had a lot of reductions in our property valuation as well. The power plant has not done us any favors since 2012 from a valuation standpoint. We collect two different types of revenue, or we did, from the power plant. Public utility personal property and real estate taxes. Those have been reduced considerably. And the Board of Revision, because the existing owners of that property filed an appeal as well to reduce the value of the property. So currently, for the upcoming year, the valuation will be $12 million less than what it was the year before when the property was purchased. That has already been ruled on, decided by the Lorain County Board of Revision. The new owners, Chara or Alerg, is that how you pronounce it, Alerg? A-L-E-R-G, thank you, Mayor. They have filed an appeal, which the school district has filed a counter complaint against, and we have been doing since 2012. They have filed an appeal because they don't believe that $12 million is enough of a reduction on their value. So we also deal with those struggles that I just wanted to mention because it is something that it hasn't been nominal amounts of money for us through the years. It's large chunks that have come off of our budget as well.
So I'm going to stay in the room and go across the room, but while I'm doing that, someone had stated with the questions about Redwood that we can't speak on because it would be a city decision. Will we forward those questions to City Hall so the mayor can see them? And the answer, obviously, I'm guessing is absolutely. So if you're listening, yes, all those Redwood questions that we cannot speak on will be handled by the mayor's office. And we're back in the room, right over here.
Thank you. Is there an overall timeline for the project? When will all the construction begin?
So let me repeat the question from Mark in the back of the room. Is there an overall timeline for the project? When would the construction be finished in that timeline?
So it would not be publicized until after the bond issue itself. There's a lot of factors that go into that timeline, one of which is that we live in Northeast Ohio. We have this wonderful thing called snow that can absolutely slow down a construction schedule. So there's a process that has to happen afterwards. The November 7th election, the sale of the bonds, as Autumn had said. And then there's a whole process where we have to identify construction companies and architect firms. And there's a process by which we have to do that is through Ohio Revised Code. So we have to go through a process that also is tied to timelines. So we have to post things for a certain amount of time. And then we go through an interview process, which is also covered by Ohio Revised Code, which is very, very detailed. So you're talking by the time the issue passes in November 7th, by the time we do all of those ancillary things, it could be a full 8 months before we even start the design process, which then takes another year. You've got to figure another 20 months for construction itself. So from the time of the bond, you're talking probably 3 to 3.5 years, depending on weather,
that the buildings would actually open.
So I've got another one online, and if there's somebody in the room, raise your hand, I'll come to you next. Okay, I'll come right to the back there. This is the question, this is our fourth. We did one in the fall, we did one in the spring, we did one in May. This is our fourth, and this question does come up. And the question is, with the decrease in the number of buildings, will there be a reduction in support staff, i.e. lunch and recess monitors, custodial staff, school nutrition staff, office staff? Did you hear me, Mark?
So certainly, we never want to see that, and we hope to handle any reductions that we would need through attrition and looking at bridging people. So many of you may know that I came from a district that opened up a new building, and the same question was asked. And we had a plan once the issue was passed, and looked at staffing and looked at who might be eligible for retirement and offered some types of incentives so we wouldn't have to actually have anyone lose their job. But through attrition and bridging, we were able to no one lost their position. We will do a very similar plan here to look at staffing and see how we can bridge those gaps to get us to the new building, and through an attrition plan and possibly some retirement incentives to keep people from losing their positions.
Okay, we have a question over here in the room.
So my question is for the calculator, is that including the parcels that have not been built yet? Because all of these homes that are being built are like $400,000, $500,000 plus. And so with all of those homes that will be built, will that bring the levy down to be paid off faster, or will that lower everybody else's taxes?
So as new homes come into the community, one important factor that we have to remember is taxes are collected a year in arrears. So everything is kind of a year behind from a tax standpoint. But as more houses are built, that tax burden is spread out over those homes. So what would happen is as valuation for the city increases, the millage then would decrease. So taxes would be adjusted to account for that. Did that answer your question?
Can I just clarify a point that just doesn't hit me right when you say that? The valuation for the city, meaning the total value of all the homes in the city?
Correct.
Correct, okay. I don't know if that caught anybody else, but when you're saying the valuation of the city, you're not talking about individually.
So, Ned, I'll bring this one over to you. We're online again. The question that I read, what are the terms of the PI fund? How long is it effective?
I was going to check me on this, but I believe the PI originally was 1991, so it was 32 years ago. It is renewed every 5 years, so every 1 and every 6 on the calendar is when that is renewed, and it generates currently $700,000 annually. It's for permanent improvements, repairs, equipment, etc. It is destined to last more than 5 years. Things like school buses, roofs, other capital improvements to buildings in the district.
In the room, anybody want me to come in your direction for a question? Some of the questions online are some of the things that have already been answered, or very similar to something that's been answered. So if you did send an online question in and I didn't ask that one verbatim, it's because it's been asked already in a different way. Jack says we're good. Really, one of our goals for these community sessions is to sit and answer every question that you have, because it's important. We want the community to be educated. No matter where you stand, we want you to know the facts so you can make a decision based on those facts and how they affect you. So we really appreciate the commitment for you to come down here, to ask us questions, to send us emails, to talk to Autumn. As I said, she is a fantastic open book treasurer who wants people to know. So if you have any follow-ups, as I said before, big on follow-ups, continue to ask those questions. Any others before we adjourn for the night? Jim, you want to give final thoughts?
Yeah, I just was going to say, we're going to make a motion to formally adjourn here in a minute, but those of us who will stick around in case you didn't want to ask a question from everybody, feel free to come up and talk to us. So I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Roll, please.
Mr. Turner? Yes. Mrs. Gardner? Yes. Mr. Yance?
Yes.
Mrs. McAvina? Mr. Stobie?
Thank you all for attending.